My name is Harper Sinclair. I'm 34 years old, and 3 days ago, I learned that some people measure your worth by your salary, not your soul. The text came from my brother Marcus on a Tuesday evening while I was sitting with a young mother who'd finally found the courage to leave. I'd just helped her fill out a restraining order. My phone was on silent, but I saw his name flash across the screen during a break. At first, it looked routine. Just Marcus sending details about his engagement dinner with Victoria's family this Friday. Then I read what he actually wanted. Harper, Friday's still on. You can come, but I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone you're my sister. Just say you're a family friend. Victoria's dad is Federal Judge Robert Harrison, and honestly, it's better if he doesn't know about your work situation. You get it, right? Your work situation. Like the crisis center I'd built from nothing was something embarrassing. Like spending 12 years helping women and children escape violence was a situation he needed to hide. I was still staring at the message when Mom called. She didn't even wait for me to say hello. Harper, sweetie, Marcus told me about the dinner. That careful, gentle voice, the one she used when she wanted me to agree to something humiliating without making it difficult for everyone else. I know his request sounds a bit unusual, but you have to understand, Victoria's family is very prominent. Her father sits on the federal bench. They move in certain circles. And I don't? It's not about that, honey. It's just, well, your work is wonderful. Truly it is. But it's not exactly the kind of thing that impresses people like the Harrisons. You understand, don't you? There it was. My work wasn't impressive. Saving lives didn't count if those lives didn't come with stock portfolios. She kept going. We've arranged a spot for you at a smaller table, just off to the side, somewhere quieter. That way you won't feel uncomfortable, and Marcus can focus on making a good impression with Victoria's family. It's just one evening, sweetheart. Surely you can do this for your brother. Just one evening of pretending I didn't exist. Just one evening of sitting in the corner while my own family introduced me as nobody. I should have said no. I should have told them both exactly where they could put their federal judge and their impressive circles and their shame. But I heard myself say, "Fine, I'll be there." Marcus texted back immediately. "Thanks, Harper, appreciate it. And maybe wear something nice but not too formal. Nothing that screams non-profit worker. Lol." Nothing that screams non-profit worker. He had no idea what he just asked me to do. He had no idea that 2 years ago, I'd spent 6 weeks helping a terrified young woman escape a man who'd broken her arm twice and told her nobody would ever believe her because of who his father was. He had no idea that the woman I'd saved was Judge Robert Harrison's daughter. And he had absolutely no idea that the man he was so desperate to impress knew exactly who I was the moment he'd see my face. So before I tell you what happened when Judge Robert Harrison walked into that private dining room and saw me tucked away at a side table like something shameful, answer me this. What would you do if your own family thought your compassion was something to hide? I didn't grow up wanting to save people. I grew up watching my brother get every advantage while I learned to make myself smaller so he could shine brighter. Marcus was the golden child from day one. Private tutors, summer internships his college counselor arranged, a car for graduation, and a downtown apartment our parents co-signed for when he landed his first consulting job in Boston. He wore expensive suits, closed corporate deals, and made the kind of money that impressed people at dinner parties. I took a different road, and nobody in my family ever understood why. I started at community college because it was all I could afford, worked overnight shifts at a diner, saved every dollar, transferred to state school on partial scholarship. I studied psychology and social work while Marcus was networking at business conferences our parents paid for. After graduation, I took a job at a women's shelter making $32,000 a year. My mother cried when I told her, not because she was proud, because she was embarrassed. "You have a college degree, Harper. You could do something real with your life." Something real. like helping women who showed up at our door with black eyes and children who hadn't eaten in 2 days, wasn't real enough. I stayed anyway, learned everything I could, sat with women while they shook and told me things they'd never said out loud, helped them file protective orders, find housing, start over with nothing but a garbage bag full of clothes and enough courage to walk out the door. 5 years later, I opened Safe Haven Crisis Center with a single grant and a borrowed office space that smelled like mildew. We had 4 beds, 1 counselor, and a phone line that rang at all hours. Today, we have 22 beds, a legal advocacy program, job training, childcare, and a staff of 11. We've helped over 300 women rebuild their lives from nothing. My parents never asked about any of it. They'd show up for Marcus's work events, brag about his promotions, but when people asked what I did, Mom would smile tightly and say, "Harper works in social services," like it was something that needed to be translated into something less uncomfortable. Marcus was worse. He'd ask when I was going to get a real career, like saving lives didn't count unless there was a 6-figure salary attached. Once at Thanksgiving, he actually said, "I mean, it's great that you care and all, but don't you want to do something you can actually retire from?" I stopped trying to explain after that. 2 years ago, everything changed, but only for me. A young woman showed up at Safe Haven in the middle of the night, early 20s, arm in a cast, face bruised, shaking so hard she could barely hold the intake form. She wouldn't give her real name at first, just said she needed somewhere safe before he found her again. It took 3 days before she trusted me enough to tell me the truth. Her name was Emily Harrison. Her boyfriend was the son of a state congressman, and her father was a federal judge who had no idea what was happening because she was too terrified to tell him. She thought nobody would believe her. She thought his family's power would bury her story. She thought she'd end up dead before anyone took her seriously. I spent 6 weeks helping Emily build a case that couldn't be ignored. Documentation, medical records, witness statements, legal filings. When she finally walked into her father's chambers and told him everything, I was standing right beside her. Judge Robert Harrison looked at me that day with something I'd never seen from my own family. Respect mixed with gratitude so raw, it didn't need words. He thanked me in his office afterwards, shook my hand with both of his, and said, "You gave me my daughter back. I will never forget what you did." I told him it was just my job. He told me it was a hell of a lot more than that. Emily's case went public 3 months later. Her ex was convicted, and Judge Robert Harrison became one of Safe Haven's biggest advocates, quietly funding programs and connecting us with resources we'd never have accessed otherwise. But I never told my family any of it. They never asked, and I'd learned a long time ago that they only wanted to hear stories that made them look good by association. Now, standing in my closet Friday evening, trying to find something nice but not too formal, I realized the saddest part of all this. I was about to sit in a room with a man who valued my work more than my own brother ever had, and I was supposed to pretend we were strangers. I chose a simple black dress, pulled my hair back, and checked my reflection one last time. I looked exactly like what I was, someone who'd learned to show up even when she wasn't wanted. 20 minutes later, I was headed toward a dinner where my family had decided I was too embarrassing to claim. What they didn't know was that the man they were trying so hard to impress already knew my name, my work, and exactly what I was worth. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. The dinner was held at the Astor Room, one of those old Boston establishments where the furniture costs more than most people's cars and the waiters move like ghosts in expensive suits. I arrived exactly on time and immediately felt the weight of the place. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, tables set with china so delicate it looked like it might shatter if you breathed on it wrong. My mother met me at the entrance before I could make it past the host stand. She was wearing her best pearls and the smile she saved for people she needed to impress. "Harper, you're here. Good." She kissed the air beside my cheek. "Your table is just over there, near the alcove. We thought you'd be more comfortable somewhere quieter." She gestured toward a small 2-person table tucked in the corner, partially hidden by a decorative partition. far enough from the main table that I could see everything, but nobody would notice me unless they were looking for me. "Perfect," I said, keeping my voice flat. Mom squeezed my arm. "Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. It's just for tonight." Just for tonight, like humiliation had an expiration date. I sat down at my little exile table and watched my brother perform. He was good at this, the networking, the charm, the carefully crafted version of himself designed to impress. He mentioned his latest consulting project, dropped a few corporate names, made himself sound important. Judge Harrison listened politely, but I noticed something. He wasn't particularly impressed. He nodded, he smiled, but his eyes kept drifting, like he was waiting for something more interesting to happen. Then, about halfway through the second course, he stood up. Victoria's mother touched his arm. "Robert, where are you going?" "Just making the rounds," he said easily. "Old habit. I like to greet everyone personally." It was the kind of thing powerful people do. Walk the room, shake hands, make people feel seen. I'd watched judges and politicians do it at fundraisers for Safe Haven. He started at the tables nearest to his, working his way through the room with that same calm authority. A handshake here, a kind word there, moving steadily from one group to the next. And then he turned toward my corner. I watched him approach, my heart beating harder than it should. Part of me wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. The other wanted to see what happened when the truth walked into the room and sat down. He was 3 steps away when his eyes found my face. He stopped so suddenly that the couple behind him nearly bumped into him. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Not with confusion, not with the polite effort of someone trying to place a face. With recognition, with something that looked like disbelief. Then his entire expression shifted into something I hadn't expected. Relief, gratitude, and something close to emotion. "Harper?" My name came out quiet, but in the suddenly silent room it carried. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. I stood up slowly, the way you do when you know the world is about to tilt. "Judge Harrison," I said evenly. He crossed the remaining distance in 2 strides and took both my hands in his, the way you greet someone who matters, someone you respect, someone you're genuinely happy to see. "My God, I had no idea you'd be here tonight." His voice was thick with something that sounded like gratitude breaking through years of careful composure. "Does Victoria know? Does anyone know?" I could feel every eye in the room on us now. My mother's face had gone pale. Marcus looked like he'd been hit with a brick. "What?" Victoria called from the main table, rising from her seat. Judge Harrison didn't let go of my hands. He looked at me first, silently asking permission. I gave him the smallest nod. He turned to face the room, and when he spoke, his voice carried the same authority it had in a courtroom. "This is Harper Sinclair. 2 years ago, she saved my daughter's life." The silence that followed was the kind that swallows sound. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. My mother grabbed the edge of the table, and Marcus looked like the floor had just opened beneath him. Judge Harrison's voice softened, but it didn't waver. My daughter Emily was in a situation I didn't even know about. She was terrified, hurt, and convinced nobody would believe her. Harper took her in, protected her, helped her build the courage to tell me the truth. She stood beside Emily when she finally came to me, and because of Harper's work, my daughter is alive, safe, and free. He turned back to me, and I saw something I'll never forget. Tears in the eyes of a federal judge who'd probably sent people to prison without blinking. "I owe you everything, Harper. Everything." Then he looked past me toward the small corner table where I'd been hidden away like something shameful, and his expression hardened. "Why," he asked slowly, "is the woman who saved my daughter sitting alone in the back of the room?" Nobody answered, because there was no good answer. Marcus found his voice first, but it came out wrong, defensive, panicked. We didn't think... Harper's work is important, obviously, but this is a family dinner and we didn't want to make it about... About what? Judge Harrison's voice cut through the excuse like a blade. About the woman who saved my daughter? About someone who does work that actually matters? Victoria was already moving toward us, her face a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. Dad, what are you talking about? Who's Harper? Harper runs Safe Haven Crisis Center, Judge Harrison said, still holding my hands like he was afraid I might disappear. She's the director, the founder, the person who took Emily in when she had nowhere else to go. Victoria's eyes went wide. She'd heard the story. She knew someone had helped her sister, but she'd never known it was me. You're the one who... She couldn't finish the sentence. I nodded. She turned to Marcus, and I watched something die in her expression. You told me Harper was a family friend. You said she worked in social services and couldn't really relate to our family dynamics. Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. My mother tried to salvage it. She always tried. There's been a misunderstanding. We just thought... You thought what? Judge Harrison's voice was ice now. That Harper's work wasn't impressive enough? That saving lives doesn't count if there's not a corporate title attached? He finally let go of my hands, but only to turn and face my family directly. Let me be very clear about something. I've sat on the federal bench for 17 years. I've met senators, CEOs, attorneys who bill $1,000 an hour, and in all that time, I have never met anyone who commanded more of my respect than Harper Sinclair. He gestured toward me without looking away from Marcus. This woman didn't just save my daughter's life. She gave her back her dignity, her future, her belief that someone would actually stand beside her when it mattered. And you people hid her in a corner like she was something to be ashamed of? My father's face had gone gray. My mother was gripping her napkin so hard her knuckles were white. But it was Victoria's reaction that ended everything. She pulled off her engagement ring, not dramatically, not with tears, just with the cold, final clarity of someone who'd suddenly seen exactly who she'd been about to marry. She set it on the table in front of Marcus with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than shouting. I can't marry someone who's ashamed of his own sister, she said quietly, especially not when his sister is a better person than he'll ever be. Marcus reached for her. Victoria, please, let me explain. Explain what? Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Explain you lied? Explain why you thought my father would be more impressed by your consulting job than by someone who actually saves lives? She looked at me then, and I saw something like apology in her eyes. I know, I said softly. Judge Harrison moved to his daughter's side and placed a hand on her shoulder. Then he looked at Marcus one last time. You should know something. I've funded Harper's Crisis Center for 2 years. I've recommended her work to colleagues across 3 states. I've watched her testify in cases that changed lives. And tonight, I was looking forward to finally meeting the family that raised someone so remarkable. He paused, letting that sink in. What I found instead was a family that couldn't recognize value when it was sitting right in front of them. He turned to me. Harper, would you join us at our table? I'd like you to sit beside Victoria, where you actually belong. It wasn't a question. It was an invitation that carried the weight of everything my family had never offered me. I looked at Marcus, at my mother, at my father. None of them said a word. So I picked up my bag, left the corner table where they'd hidden me, and walked across the room to sit with people who understood that worth isn't measured in salary. It's measured in what you do when someone needs you and nobody's watching. Behind me, I heard my mother start to cry, but for the first time in my life, it wasn't my job to make her feel better. The dinner ended shortly after that. There was no saving it. Judge Harrison and Victoria left with quiet grace, but not before he handed me his card and told me to call him Monday about expanding Safe Haven's legal advocacy program with additional funding. My parents tried to approach me before I left, but I held up one hand and kept walking. Marcus called 17 times that weekend. I didn't answer. By Monday, the engagement was officially over. By the end of the month, Marcus had lost 2 major clients who'd heard the story through Boston's very small, very connected professional circles. Turns out, people don't trust consultants who can't recognize value in their own family. My parents sent a long email about forgiveness and how family should come first. I deleted it without reading past the first line. 6 months later, Safe Haven received a grant that doubled our capacity. Judge Harrison showed up to the ribbon-cutting ceremony and brought Emily with him. She hugged me for a full minute and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me I was worth saving." That's when I finally understood something I'd spent 34 years trying to learn. The people who truly see your worth will never ask you to hide it, and the people who ask you to disappear don't deserve a front-row seat to your life. My brother wanted me invisible because my truth made his lies uncomfortable. But the truth doesn't need permission to matter. It just needs someone brave enough to stand in it.